As a teacher, if you don't get the respect you deserve, will you still be willing to continue? I can't remember how many times the classroom door was pushed open and the girl was called back to work by her mother. I was very angry. As a teacher, I was completely ignored when I stood on the podium. Today, I must have a good talk with this parent. I am Beth. When I was a child, my biggest dream was to become a teacher. In order to realize this dream, I used to hold a flashlight at night and read and study page by page under the moonlight. My family is not happy. My parents quarreled all day long. There was no warmth or support at home. Later, I fell in love with a classmate. Not long after, I got pregnant and became the youngest mother in the school. Because of pregnancy, I had to take a leave of absence. 8 years later, I got my college diploma and walked into the interview room of the Education Bureau with this heavy effort. The interviewer flipped through my resume with a look of pessimism on his face. Fortunately, I finally got the job. There was only one condition: work for a full year. I told myself that I would stick to it. But when I arrived at the destination, according to the address on the note, I was stunned. The streets were full of police cars and homeless people were everywhere. I couldn't even find a decent road. I once doubted whether I had gone to the wrong place. I still plucked up the courage and got out of the car. As a result, I stepped into a puddle after a few steps. The shoes that I had wiped countless times were dirty. As soon as I stepped into the teaching building, the scene in front of me made me unforgettable until now. Where's the school here? Did I go to the wrong place? It was clearly an abandoned house full of garbage. The walls were mottled, the air was turbid, the blackboard was covered with graffiti, and the desks were tilted like a forgotten corner. Previous teacher handed over the work to me at a very fast speed and spoke without patience. Before she left, she only left a secret. If you can't control the students, just play movies as long as they don't run to the street to make trouble. Anything is fine. An experienced teacher who had only worked here for 2 weeks was tortured to the point of collapse. I couldn't imagine how I would survive if I stayed here for a whole year. Then I took a deep breath, pushed open the door of the classroom, tried to force a smile, and took the initiative to greet the children. But they didn't take me seriously at all. The older students laughed at me and called me a new clown. In the first class, I wanted to get familiar with these children as soon as possible, so I took out the family album. I tried to mobilize the atmosphere and asked them if they liked to make snowmen, but unexpectedly, a group of children just looked at each other silently and no one answered me. I realized that they might not even have seen snow. The whole classroom suddenly began to shake. I almost thought it was an earthquake, and my heart was in my throat. The students told me that it was okay, just a train passing by. I had to calm myself down, but I didn't expect that the mouse was also awakened by the vibration and rushed out of the hole. The children screamed in fear and fled everywhere. Only I reached out my hand reflexively and gently took the mouse out of the classroom. My action made the children look at me with new eyes. In fact, I was also scared to death, but I told myself that I was a teacher and could not lose control in front of students. This is my bottom line. Finally, school was over, and just as I was about to leave, I found something extra on the desk, a small gift from a child. I returned home with the gift in my hand. I could no longer control my emotions that I had suppressed for a whole day, and I squatted on the ground and cried bitterly. The reality was too far from the education career I had dreamed of. The next day, I still came to school on time. The first thing I did was to call the Education Bureau, but the other party just said lightly that the budget was not enough and sent me away. The school environment was the same as the day before. The whizzing train, the precarious bookshelves, and those undisciplined children. Because the age difference of students is so big, I have to formulate teaching strategies according to different situations, so I decided to have a test first. But just after the test paper was distributed, a boy lay on the table with a painful look on his face, and I hurried over to check the situation. Only then did I know that the children here have hardly had a decent breakfast since they were born. I quickly took out the snacks I brought with me from my bag and handed them to him. This short warmth lasted only a few minutes. Suddenly, an angry parent broke into the classroom, not caring about the students who were taking the exam. He completely ignored the existence of me as a teacher and called the child out to help him. I couldn't understand how parents could treat their children like this. I was so angry that I chased him out and wanted to say something. But before I could open my mouth, the other party accused me in front of everyone, saying that I didn't understand their lives and asked me not to meddle in other people's business. For the first time, I felt completely frustrated in teaching. A nurse stopped me. Because the sanitary environment was too poor, she asked me to get an antibacterial vaccine. She also reminded me that no one here knows the weight of the word respect. But I was away for a short while and the classroom was in chaos. The students without supervision threw the test papers around like wild horses without rein. reins. I shouted at their behavior, but in return, a student stuck his butt out and mocked me, and the whole class laughed. I really couldn't hold on any longer, so I decided to show them a movie tomorrow. I brought the videotape to school, but I didn't expect that the parent from yesterday was waiting for me at the door early. I thought he was here to cause trouble again, but what he said unexpectedly comforted me. I put the old TV I brought from home in place when the nurse from the rescue station came over and asked me to go over for the injection. I was away for only a few minutes, and when I came back, the TV was gone and there was only a lonely videotape left on the stage. Someone told me that a man stole the TV while I was away, and I even politely opened the door for them when I left. Looking at the empty podium, I completely collapsed. I rushed to the hall and loudly questioned those people, but they looked at me indifferently as if they were looking at a funny clown. I no longer remember what a lady is. At that moment, I stood in the hall ready to move the TV back to the classroom, but I underestimated its weight and pushed it hard several times, but it didn't even move. I finally understood why these children were so indifferent, and I also saw the environment they were in. Just then, the nurse came over and told me that I was pregnant again. The arrival of a new life gave me hope to persevere. I took the handwritten list of materials and went to the Education Bureau in person. The other party only glanced at it and then said lightly that there was no budget. Since I can't rely on others, I rely on myself. I took out my little savings, bought a bunch of materials, and prepared to renovate this classroom by myself. A homeless man passing by took the initiative to help me. A girl passed by and joined in curiously. At lunch, the homeless man looked at the wall I hadn't finished painting. He asked me to wait a moment and then brought an uncle with an oxygen tank on his back. The man took off his scarf, picked up the paintbrush, and a lifelike cow appeared on the wall. I drove a pickup truck to bring a whole truck of stationery, green plants, and some daily necessities that children can use. Seeing my dedication, those parents who were once indifferent also came to help. When the children walked in, the originally dilapidated and dirty classroom became bright and warm. I also prepared jelly and milk for each child as breakfast. For the first time, they felt what it meant to be respected. They sat neatly and no one made a noise. I took the opportunity to apologize to everyone while they were eating breakfast. I shouldn't have lost my temper last week. Then I asked them, "What do you think is respect?" One child said that it is not to speak loudly in public. Another said that it is not to fight with others. I nodded. Yes, the first lesson I want to teach them is respect. I moved almost everything that can be used in the house. With a radio, the children can also listen to music, and the uncle who painted the cow also became our art teacher. There is no reward, but he still works hard. Slowly, the children began to love learning. Danny has changed. He used to be the most rebellious, but now he is the most obedient one. Because he is the oldest, he has become my most reliable assistant. Thanksgiving Day is coming soon. On that day, I hope that every child can write a greeting card to their parents. Unexpectedly, the parents who received the cards all smiled. When I went home, I found the greeting cards that the students secretly stuffed into my coat pocket. There was a sentence written crookedly on it, "I love you." The next morning, the administrator informed me that 6 more children were sent last night. Hearing this news, I was so angry that I rushed directly into the office of the Minister of Education. I didn't beat around the bush and handed him the cards and paintings given to me by the children and told him the stories behind each child one by one. Those miseries and struggles should not be buried in a corner where no one can hear. As soon as I arrived at the school, I heard a lot of noise in the classroom. The children were all ecstatic around the desks. They finally had decent desks and chairs and unified teaching materials. It turned out that the minister really fulfilled his promise. He admitted that he had never received any official reports about the shelter school. They could not see it in the system at all. He specially approved a sum of education funds and solemnly told me, "From now on, I am the principal of this school. If you need anything, come directly to him." I didn't waste time. The first thing I did was to find the uncle who had been silently giving up. I wanted to invite him to be an art teacher and give him the same salary as mine, but he declined. He said that he was willing to come every day and my salary could be used to give the children extra meals. Everything seemed to be getting better, but fate played a joke again. Maria, the top achiever, is about to be kicked out of the shelter. Her father had been kicked out by the administrator for drinking and fighting. I fought the administrator for the opportunity and offered to take care of her myself. I organized parent-teacher conferences to emphasize the importance of parents in education and offered 2 hours a day without TV, and the parents unexpectedly supported me. One mother wanted to go out and get a job for her daughter for a change, but she couldn't read, so I decided to offer another adult literacy class to teach the children as well as their parents. As the day of the birth drew nearer, the minister came to see me and said he was working on getting us a new classroom and more teachers. During baseball class, a familiar figure suddenly appeared. It was Maria's father returning. I approached the superintendent again and pleaded with him to make another exception. I didn't want to waste an ounce of time. When I taught the class, I would talk about knowledge while taking the children through principles. I wanted them to learn solidly and to understand the laws of the world. This year, I became the most important person in their hearts, but it wasn't until I received Maria's parting letter. My teaching contract was about to expire. Looking at the children, I gathered my courage and spoke of my decision to leave. My due date was approaching, and I might not be able to return to the podium for the next few years. Stubborn Danny walked out of the classroom without a word. After giving birth, the nurse on the ward told me that there was a group of children waiting outside for a long time, and they said I was their mother. When I opened the door of the ward, the corridor was crowded with children and parents. At that moment, I really understood that my persistence was not in vain. During my maternity leave, the minister hired new teachers for the school. I wrote a resume for each child, recording their personality and specialties, hoping that they would be treated gently in the future. I received a call from Maria. She said that she was now living with her grandmother in the South and had already entered junior high school. She told me that she wanted to be a teacher in the future, like me. A few months later, I returned to school. The minister greeted me and said that the government had finally approved the land to build a real school for the children in the shelter. They can have formal school records just like other children. Soon after, the local government passed the Homeless Children Act, and these children finally had the right to equal education. A year later, the city's first school specifically for homeless children was built on that land. I continued to teach for 8 years. Later, I was awarded the National Public Service Outstanding Individual Award. But no matter how glamorous the medal is, it cannot compare to the tender voice of a child calling me teacher, because I know that I have tried my best to light up one dark corner after another.